Friends, I am just honestly thrilled about who I get to invite back on the show today. I'm sitting here with my friend, Danielle Bayard Jackson. Danielle, welcome back to Girls Night.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
You are one of my favorite guests ever. I just have to say that. I'm not sorry. This is your third time being on the show. Is that right?
Oh, is it? I don't know.
I think it's the third. And
okay, well,
I'm not sorry.
We're
we are in the middle of the journey. This is not ending anytime soon. The things that you have to say about friendship, I finish every one of our conversations being like, well, and that just changed everyone's life. So we're just going to keep bringing you back.
I'm so glad. No, I appreciate you for facilitating a moment for us to have these conversations, because friendships are often top of mind, but unfortunately don't get as much attention as other subjects. So this is important.
It is. Tell us, for women who haven't gotten to meet you yet, tell us who you are, what you do, and a fun fact about yourself.
Oh gosh, I should have been prepared for the fun fact.
I know. The fun fact is tricky, especially when you've been on the show a couple times. It requires you to dig deep. So if you need a second to think, let us know.
So much pressure. Well, I'm Danielle Bayard Jackson. I am a friendship coach and educator. And I often joke that, if I'm at a party and somebody's like, so what do you do? I'm always getting looks of suspicion, like, girl, is that a real job? But I actually started out as a high school English teacher for 6 years. And I saw the drama with the female students every day. And then I became the academic chair, and the teachers under my leadership were telling me about the drama, and we're trying to solve it together because we saw firsthand the issues that connection and belonging, the role that plays on everything else. It impacted their attendance, their confidence, their mood, whether or not they felt like they belonged. And so after that, I got into public relations, and I was working with these charismatic, high-achieving women. And it wasn't long before I realized that they too, privately, were deeply unsatisfied with their female friendships. And so for the past 6 years, I leveraged my background in education to study what the research has to say about women's cooperation, communication, and conflict. And as far as a fun fact, I don't know if it's a fun fact or if I've already given it, but I had a band in college and was all about that band's life.
What kind
I'm trying
of
to tame
band?
it down for you.
What kind of band?
It was a little bit of soul, a little bit of R&B, but whenever I need a good fix, then we'll go to karaoke.
Were you the singer?
Yes. Yeah.
Can we have a video?
No, you may not. I'm trying to elevate.
All right. Well, okay. That's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I just put it on like a bucket list of mine to do karaoke with you at some point.
Okay. Oh, yes, please.
Okay. I love this. I love you. You have a new book coming out. Thank goodness. I'm so excited for this. I've been excited for this for years. I seriously, the first time we talked, I was like, and when's your book coming out? We need this. We need this in the world. So it's called Fighting for Our Friendships, the Science and Art of Conflict and Connection in Women's Relationships. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, I'm so excited for it. And honestly, I wasn't thinking about writing a book until somebody left a comment on my TikTok once. They were like, I'm just sitting over here waiting for the book. And I was like, oh, okay. That could be
was
cool.
Was it me? Was it my comment?
I don't know. What's your fake account handle?
Listen.
No, it was so interesting. But, long story short, it's just, I know friendship is having a moment, which it should be, right? More than a moment, but it's having a moment. So there are these more and more literature on friendship, which I'm so excited about. But something I did notice is friendship books were either co-ed and talking about men and women's friendships, or it was a little highbrow from academics, or it was a bunch of tips and tricks, but nothing solid that it was rooted in. And so maybe it's just the teacher and me, but I wanted a book that showed us both a high level view. What are the mechanics of women's friendships? What brings us together? What tears us apart? In plain language, according to the research. And that's the first half of the book. And then the second half brings us down from the aerial view into the nitty gritty, because we want to understand it from a high level, but then you also need to be equipped with strategies to navigate the day-to-day business of being friends. And so my hope is that it's one of many books on people's friendship, in their friendship library, one of many books. But if you're specifically curious about women's cooperation and conflict, I'm hoping that this is helpful.
I want to ask, why, before we even get started, high level, why is friendship important?
Yeah, so it's important for a lot of reasons. And I know a lot of us intuitively know that to be true. Like friendship matters. But my whole thing that I'm waving a banner about is we talk a lot about friendship from a recreational standpoint, that it's nice to have girls to go to brunch with. And that's true, right? But I don't think we're talking about it enough as a wellness imperative, that there is a direct connection between your physical, mental, emotional health and the quality of your relationships. I'm not, making that up. It's not just a feel good, fluffy little mantra. And so if you're having trouble sleeping and with anxiety and with depression, there are lots of things to help us through that, thank God. But I also would encourage you to take a look at the strength of your social network because it might be the missing link. The missing link.
I love that so much. And I'm totally not going to be able to like quote this correctly, so maybe you can fix it. But there's research that I think has been out since the 80s about how lack of social connection leads to can contribute to like early death, right?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, people who they report having a strong social network or strong social support do tend to outlive those who don't. And if we think about it, it's like, okay, well, if you have strong social support, you're probably more active, right? That's how you created those connections, which leads to better health. You probably have people to talk to, so that helps with emotional support. You're probably engaged in activities with them. And the research tells us that we tend to enjoy things more when we do it with another person. So there's a lot wrapped up in what that entails. And, there's research out of Harvard. They conducted the longest running study on happiness, and people have been talking about it lately. Over 80 years, they're following generations to try to figure out what makes us happy. They looked at everything. And long story short, it's the quality of your relationships. It determines your overall life satisfaction and well being. So, yes, friendship is just that important.
I'm so glad that we started there. I'm so glad we started there because you're exactly right. We do. We talk about it as recreation, as like a nice to have, and it's not a nice to have, it's a must have.
Yeah.
Um, you said that in the beginning of your book, you talk about the things that bring women together and tear women apart. And
Mhm.
I want to like just hear anything that's, obviously that's like a whole chunk of research and writing, but anything that comes to mind that you can share with us. Let's start with tears us apart.
Yeah, so they're all kind of rooted in the same thing. And my theory is this is, I don't know if you've noticed, but like I watch videos on social media and it's like, here are things that make you a girl's girl, and here's girl code, and here's like you're trying to commit to memory all these things of what good friends are supposed to do and what are the red flags. And we can either keep trying to commit this long list of stuff to memory, which I wish we had like one big shared Google Doc so I know what am I supposed to do, what am I not supposed to do, or we can kind of like batch it. What are the three key things? And so, from the research that I've done or that I've studied, it tends to come down to three things. And for women, those three things are symmetry, secrecy, and support. And when you feel like you have a lot of it from your female friends, you're probably super close. And as soon as you perceive that there's some kind of violation in one of those three areas, there's going to be tension. It doesn't spell the end of your friendship, but you're going to have to recalibrate to get back on the same page. So symmetry is we really, really value reciprocity. It's probably the number one complaint I hear. I feel like I'm doing more than she is. That is very important. So feelings of symmetry include reciprocity, egalitarianism, like we feel equal, and just like equality and a sense of sameness, like, oh, she's like me. Okay. The second thing is support, which the research tells us is the number one thing women look for in their same sex friendships, hands down. The problem with that, of course, is that that's very subjective. What does that mean to support you? If I think I'm doing a good job and you don't, or worse, if you won't tell me because you believe that I ought to know because I'm your friend. And then finally is secrecy. And that doesn't mean literal secrets, but just the feeling of us being in a vault together. It's me
Mm,
and you, it's exclusive. There's self disclosure, there's trust. If in any of those three things, symmetry, secrecy, or support, we feel like she's not doing enough, she's doing too much, and we perceive a violation, then there's going to be conflict.
that is so good. That is so good. Um, I want to hear something that you talk about in the book is different friend types. I want to hear you kind of talk about that because I don't even know if I could guess what the different friend types are and like how that affects us.
Yeah. So first, let me say this. If you just Google friend types or if you're on TikTok, everybody's got their own list. Here are 5 types of friends you need. Like, it's very popular. I get it. The way we design these types of friends is because of this is I was on the back patio one day talking to a friend and I was like, oh, I got to tell you about Nadia. And she was like, oh, your clingy friend. And I had a ping of guilt because I thought like, okay, well, yeah, that's who I'm talking about. But hearing her referred to that way, I felt bad. And it reminded me that when we have an issue with the friend, we tend to reduce her to the problem that she presents in that season. The clingy friend, the negative friend, the love obsessed boy crazy friend. We reduce her to the problem she presents. And the problem is, I think we end too many of our friendships prematurely because that season comes up and we're like, oh God, I can't deal. And we lose sight of the rest of her humanity and the rest of what she offers. So our goal with the friend types was to show, here's some different types of friends. Here are some reasons you might be experiencing her this way. Here's what to say to try to recalibrate. Here are some signs it might be past saving. And here are some signs you might be the clingy friend, the negative friend, because my thought is that to somebody, you just might be that friend, to another friend, it's all relative. So it just kind of helps us to self-evaluate and see the humanity of our friend before we decide to cut things off.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So what are some of the, like, I guess now I'm just curious. What are some of the different types?
Yeah. So one is the negative friend, and that can include, the chronic venting, or if we have a friend who's critical, right? And she doesn't mean to be, but she's always got an opinion on something, which can be an issue. There is the love obsessed friend. And of course we want our girls to be happy. So she's with her man and she's excited, that's great. But when it becomes something where she's canceling plans last minute to opt for a date with him, or, she becomes unreliable, or she no longer asks about updates in your life because all she wants to talk about is the new guy, so how do I navigate that instead of dismissing her as, oh, she got too boy crazy, so I'm done? So how do we work through it? Should we choose to work through it? There's the jealous friend. I hate to say it, but like, even if you Google female friend, it auto-populates with jealous. So it's a highly searched term, but it feels so icky to kind of accuse another woman of, because you look like you are feeling yourself, right? So, who wants to say, I think she's jealous of me? It just feels gross, even though you might genuinely suspect it. So we talk about that.
Obsessed with me.
Yeah. Why are you so obsessed? Oh my God. But that's an issue. And, there are others where we just kind of took, okay, what are some common complaints we hear? The newly changed friend, which is not necessarily negative, but that's a big one. She used to be like this, and now she's like this. Whether she's adopting a new lifestyle, a new interest, new worldviews. How do we navigate that? If we can. So we tried to figure out what are some of the top complaints we hear from clients on social media, and put them in these easy to digest containers, and then offer some ways to navigate them, and then offer some signs that it might not be navigable.
I love everything about that, because we all have had those friends, and then we've all been those friends. And I think that, I love that you're putting the humanity back into it, because one of the things that my friends and I say a lot is like, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm always talking about this. And we always have to tell each other, like, no, stop saying sorry. You're going through something hard. You're allowed to talk about this as much as you need to. You can be the negative friend right now because you just lost someone, or you're trying to figure this out. Stop apologizing for where you are right now. What we're recognizing on our end, though, is she's not going to be here forever. We won't be in this position of, listening to her vent forever. This is a season. We'll walk you through it as long as it takes. But we know that every time we talk to you for the rest of our friendship, you're not going to be complaining about something. Also, the love obsessed friend, I've totally, when I met my husband and we started dating, I was living with a dear, a friend who's basically my sister. And we had a really hard time in our friendship at that point, because she's like, where did you go? I'm like, I'm falling in love. I'm sorry. I'm just not present at the moment. But I came back, and then when she met her person, she kind of dropped off the face of the earth for a while, and then she came back too. And so I love that it's, who are you, or who is she right now? How do you interact with her? How can you get through this together? And also that there's some room for, if your friend really is going to never talk to you without venting, or if your friend is always going to put her dates in front of you, then when do you kind of move on?
Yeah, I'm so glad you gave those examples. But the way you said it is perfect, helping us understand who she is now. Because I do think a lot of us, we experience a shift, and then our brain gets to going. We get to ruminating. Oh gosh, is this how it's always going to be?
Mhm.
It wasn't like this before. And you get anxious around, oh my God, is this? But friendships are dynamic, and the definition of dynamic is something that's forever changing. It's always moving and shape shifting. And so I just encourage us to examine our personal and relational resilience. When things change, how do you do with that? Some of us not so well.
Yeah.
So helping us stretch, hopefully, to experience a little more satisfaction and maybe longevity in some of our female friendships.
Yeah. I also love that there's a reflective piece of that too, because those are things that can make us hard to be friends with. And I think for so many of us, we will look at a friendship that ended and we'll go, what happened there?
Mm.
And I think that having some ways to diagnose the problem before it gets too out of hand, or even just to, hey, these are some things to watch out for. It's hard as a friend when your friend is always ditching you for a guy. Okay, well, next time I start dating somebody, I'm going to be aware of that and try to, adjust for that a little bit so that I don't put my friends through something that's hard for them to get through.
Yeah, I love that. The self-awareness is, I think, number one, right?
Mhm.
It's hard to be in relationship with anyone, I think, who doesn't have a little glimpse of self-awareness of, okay, yeah, you know what? I own that. That was on me. That's my bad. I'm working on it. So for those, I don't think, who are able to do that, it's very hard to be in relationship with them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. One of the things that I get really, I'm sure I've said this before, but friendship is such a tender thing for me. It's kind of there's sort of three things that immediately come up. One, I am absolutely who I am because of the women in my life. They're, honestly, you might be ahead of me because this is your thing, but you and I might be the top two fans of female friendship ever. I love it so much. Also, there's nothing I have cried about harder in therapy than friendship wounds, throughout my life. There's just nothing that has just broken my heart more than female friendships. And then also, I think there's nothing that nothing is probably strong, but I'm so defensive of female friendships when people say girls are catty or girls are mean or girls are whatever, or I just am that is reductive and wrong. And
Mm.
you are looking at a bad apple and you are judging the bunch, or it does not have to be that way. So those are I just have really strong feelings when it comes to friendship. And so I want to hear from you, with I guess, what do you say when people are women are mean, or girls are catty, or girls are female friendship is all drama, or yeah, what do you say? What do you say to that?
Yeah. Yes. That's so interesting. You know what I've learned to say to be most effective? Because I too, just like you, I feel that flame of defensiveness come up. And then also a little you're a little turned off by the girl who said it, because you're because you're talking about me. I'm a woman. So, so you can't help but to feel defensive and a little put off by that.
Yeah.
Something I found over time that tends to invite conversation is to say, oh, interesting. What's happened to make you feel that way? What have you been through? What have you seen? Tends to change a lot. And here's why. And I wasn't always doing that. In fact, I've had a journey because I used to be the girl saying that in my first year of college. Okay. So I've come a long way. But what changed my mind was there's this research by Dr. Hannah Bradshaw, and she was studying guys, girls, self-proclaimed guys, girls. And she found that guys, girls say they go to the company of men because they are mistreated by women, girls, okay, that they're hostile to them. And that's why they go to men. But girls, for lack of a better term, say that they don't like guys, girls because they're in the company of men. It's a bidirectional relationship. It's a cycle. So we say, well, you think, you're over there with guys and that looks kind of some kind of way out. And then she's like, well, you guys are petty. It's a cycle. And so that really convicted me because I'm like, oh, interesting. How have I contributed to that? So now if I hear a girl say like, oh, women are they're so jealous, they're so catty, I'll say, oof, well, what have you been through? Has that happened to you before? Like, what's happened? What made you think that? What have you been through? And so even starting there, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been through that too. Yeah. But you know what I realized? And like taking them through your journey, I've realized helps them to soften, because what I think might surprise people is the clients that I have, most are high achieving, smart women. I can't tell you how many come to me because they have an aversion to other women, but also want to be loved by them. And that's why they're paying me money to figure out, how do I have more women friends? Even though a part of me is like, I don't know if I like them or trust them or am comfortable around them. How can I get female friends? Yeah. And so, I'm sure there's tons to work with there in terms of mother wounds or trauma and all the things. Either way, many of them know that the source of their pain is also the source of their healing. And so I try not to dismiss them, even though it's hard, because I know there's something there.
That is so profound. And I feel like that's true that's just so true with everything. Like if we've been hurt by something, if we've been hurt by someone, we're naturally going to put a wall up, or it's easier to deal with feeling rejected when you are also rejecting. So you're like, well, great, I don't like girls. Like, and then as a woman, you're like, well, that makes me mad and hurts my feelings all at the same time. And so I'm going to react that way, which exactly as you said, I've never noticed that before, but that is so real. And so by seeing the hurt underneath that statement of like, I'm so sorry, it feels like it has to be that way. Like by seeing the hurt there, instead of reacting to the bold statement, we can slow the cycle a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And I also advise women who say that to stop saying that. It's not helpful. just stop. It's not helpful. If you want to make some women friends, you got to stop with the whole, like announcing how awful women are is probably not helpful.
Yes. When I first moved to Nashville, that was the first time I had to make new friends on my own from scratch, like not being in a class or a work environment or whatever. Like I was working from home. I didn't know anybody and I had to truly start from scratch. And one of the things that I did wrong that I'd be like, stop saying that, is anytime I would meet someone, I would tell them that I didn't like Nashville and then I couldn't wait to move back home to Denver. And so it was like, yeah, I'm really homesick. I cannot wait to move back home. I'm just counting the days till I can leave. And people are probably like, well, I am going to invest in you 0 because you, A, don't like my city, and B, are not planning on staying here. So why in the world would I? Yeah. It took me probably a year to stop saying that and to be like, this is probably not helping. Yeah.
Exactly. But now you know. Now you know. Yeah.
I heard something one time about how women are like, as women, we know, even though I'm very resistant to the idea that we are all catty, I just reject it. We do have a different kind of like warfare than men do, that I would argue is like 10,000 times deadlier. That men can't, like, my husband is he is very emotionally aware. He is very emotionally intelligent. He's a great communicator. And sometimes he doesn't even see it. I'm like, there was something to that. And he goes, no, there wasn't. Yes, there was. What is that? What is that? Why do we do that? Like, is that a real thing? I'm dying to know some of the science behind it, if there is some.
Yeah, that's definitely a real thing. So it's called relational aggression. It's not exclusive to women, but women are known for using this. I call it sophisticated stealth, and you know it when you see it. So, we all kind of know that scene where, a fifth grader shouts at another girl, "You can't sit here." Okay. That's very obvious. It's easy to spot to the eye. Well, as you grow older, you realize that there are social consequences for being that girl.
Mm.
So once you get older, it becomes more sophisticated. I'm not shouting, "You can't sit here," because that makes me look bad. So if I'm still upset, resentful, don't like you, and I don't want you to be here, I have to find other ways to strike at you while also maintaining an appearance of cooperation. So this might look like gossiping, but instead of being like, "Susie sucks," I might say, "Oh gosh, Susie was really mean to me yesterday. And I don't know, just it's not like her, but she's been kind of mean lately, don't you guys think?" Or talking about her clothes. I mean, I love her, I do, but just I don't know, it's a lot of skin, right? Like it's kind of a racy dress, right? So it's little things because I still look like I'm doing it out of concern, but there's an art to that, right? Another might be the silent treatment. So I'm not speaking to you to ice you out, but if you accuse me of it, I can deny that and say, "No, I wasn't not speaking to you. What do you mean?" So we look for ways that are covert to strike at another person, but do it in such an elusive way that if somebody called me out, I could say, "Oh my gosh, no, what are you talking about?" Or like, "I didn't know you were sensitive to that. I'm so sorry." And all of us, we're kind of like triggered right now. We're like, "Yes, I know exactly what you mean." But I would argue that the reason we're so good at it. And I wish I knew the woman who first said this so I can give her credit. This is not my idea, but she said that it's because we have such high emotional intelligence. And so that's on that spectrum. The women who have high emotional intelligence do it really well because the same thing that kind of allows me on my radar to sense when you need help or that you're sad, even though you're saying you're okay, that same little radar allows me to also be able to kind of strike you in a way that looks like I'm not doing anything at all. So it kind of lives on the same radar. And so, I think there's a lot of reasons we do it. One, because we don't want to look like the bad guy, right? We don't want to risk losing other relationships because we look like a mean girl. So I have to be careful about how I do it. And also culturally, we don't really have the same space as a man would to be like, "Hey, what you did yesterday really sucks. Can you not do that?" Do I look difficult? Do I look like I'm being a witch? Do I look like I'm too sensitive? Especially, I'm a Black woman of color. We really don't get the same tolerance of being angry and using that humanity. So, I don't want to look like I'm being too angry. So culturally, if I'm not giving the same permissions to just directly be like, "Girl, what you said yesterday was kind of crazy. Can we talk about that?" So I teeter totter a little bit. So, I think there's a mix of different factors that tempt us to operate that way. But yeah, you definitely know it when you see it.
Yeah, so triggered. I think I'm trying to think of what like silent treatment. Oh, I didn't know you were sensitive to that.
Mm.
Is like because oh man.
You just want to like claw her. You just want to claw her eyes out,
It's but my husband and I always joke about how like the fastest thing you can say to someone to like just make them totally lose their mind is like, "Whoa, buddy, like easy there, like no need to get worked up." It's just, I mean, there's nothing like hearing that makes you want to just become a crazy person.
Yes. Yeah, exactly that. And it's weird too, because it's like, one scenario we give in the book is like, let's say you're on the outs with a friend. It's kind of weird. And you arrive at a party that she's already at. And, she looks at you and she goes and hugs everybody else, but doesn't hug you. And then in front of everybody, she asks, "How's the job search going?" But other people didn't know that you were unemployed. Like if you confront her on that, she could easily say, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't like not hugging you. I just was hugging them. That wasn't intentional." Or she could say, "Oh, I didn't know you didn't want me to talk about the job thing. I didn't know that was like personal to you." So the way that works, which is so sinister, is you look like a crazy person and she looks like a woman who's been falsely accused. So it just is so frustrating, but that's kind of how it operates.
What are our options in that?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I love I love the example of walking in the room. She hugs everybody else. Something's off. Like, and this is I guess, what do you do in that moment? Yeah. what are our options there?
Yeah,
Because currently
yeah.
I feel trapped.
Yeah, totally. That's a great word. You feel stuck. Like, if I complain about this, do I look I'm bashing her? It's a whole thing, right? We've all been there.
And you're in this space, and this is true of school, this is true of work, this is whatever. You're in a space where you don't feel safe. And so like what are your options there too? If all your friends are there, but in being in that room, you feel so unwelcome, I guess. Like, yeah, what are your options?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. It's all situational and everybody's different, right? But a couple things. So like in that moment, personally, what I would do is not register that. Right. So like, let's say they're not hugging. I'm not gonna, oh, now I have an attitude all night and I'm not trying to persuade others that was so messed up. Did you guys see that? Did you see? I saw it. Right. And maybe my good friends who know what's going on, they saw it too. I got to trust they saw it too. We know, so maybe I first look for ways that my response might make me look like the crazy person or damper my experience of this event. So how can I just like compartmentalize that for a second? Maybe in the car, I have a good cry, or maybe later, but tonight I'm going to keep saying hello to people and have a great night. That's the first thing, is I'm not letting this ruin my night. Right. Because it's tricky. And I know that's easier said than done, but how can you tell yourself, whoa, that is about to set me off for the rest of the night. I'm going to sit by myself. I'm going to not talk to people. So the ripple effects of that can be something that's detrimental to your entire experience. And we're not going to let her take that from us. Okay. The second thing is, if in the moment a person says something that you know is an attempted dig, you can always say, wait, now what do you mean by that? Right. And put the spotlight back on. What do you mean? Especially forcing people to have to explain that. Or you can just kind of cut it off with a one sentence response. Oh yeah, I actually am still working that out, but I'll let you know. And then I'm moving on. I'm going to go get another drink. I'm going to go dance, whatever it is, but I'm still working that out. Thank you for asking. Another thing is, you can act like you don't even realize it. So this kind of makes things fall apart, is to be like, yeah, the job hunt is actually, really tough, but that's really nice of you. Like, thank you so much for asking. Like, I'm not letting that register, right? Which is a little bit of game playing, but the whole point of it is I want to ruffle your feathers. So if I make a dig to someone and she looks completely unbothered, it's like, okay, well, she doesn't get it. Like, it's falling apart. And then the final two options you have are, one-on-one, because a lot of the humiliation thrives on having a third party there to witness. So one-on-one, I might tell her, hey, I noticed a couple of the comments you made today, and I have a good feeling that they are things that you're saying in an attempt to, embarrass me, or I'm not really sure what's going on. But I've told you before that the job thing was private for me. So if you don't mind not bringing it up, that would be really great. I really appreciate that. Right? I'm letting you know one-on-one, I saw what you did. And I'm also going to point to facts, because if we say things like, I feel like you have an attitude, I feel like that was shady, anybody can contest that. What do you mean? So saying like, hey, you bringing up the job thing, I told you before that was private to me. So again, if you could just keep that to yourself, I just really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm letting you know, I know, privately. And then the final thing I would say is, if you can help it, because sometimes you can't, if you can help it, try to enjoy your friends on a one-on-one capacity. If you know you have a friend in the group who's nasty to you, how can you just have one-on-one conversations and remove third parties, which I know is not ideal, but sometimes if you can't escape her, how can you minimize the times that you guys are in a group setting so that she doesn't have people to do that in front of?
Yeah. What about the hug thing? Like, if it's something that's a little less, because I think that's probably I'm such a feelings person that like I'll register something with my feelings that I'm so caught up in it that I won't even be able to like point to this is exactly what happened. Like, it takes a lot of work for me to like nab the fact and like hold on to it. So yeah, how does that change? How does that change?
Yeah. And I know what you mean. The frustration around, I'm upset, but maybe I don't have the right words. And I know I'm not crazy. I know I'm not crazy. I know this happened, and I'm really upset because I don't know how to convince others or to shut it down. And that's a lot. And it's very isolating too, because you feel like, is anybody else seeing this here? It can feel very isolating. The first thing I would the main thing I would say here is, if somebody's doing those kind of covert things and you can't really touch it, but it's in the air, but you can't touch it, is to find a way, again, if I can't like minimize the times I'm in sharing space with her, but you have to ask yourself, and this sounds so like a little woo-woo and life coachy, but what are the things that I can control here? What can I control here? because I'm going to drive myself crazy trying to do preemptive strikes or spending the rest of my night kind of tracking her out of the corner of my eye to see where she is so I can avoid her. We've all done it. I've done it where I'm like, oh God. And it took more of my energy to make sure I was not around or to keep psychoanalyzing every little thing she did to see, okay, well, what was the subtext of that? So at some point I have to say, okay, what can I control? I can control if I sit at this table with her. I can control whether or not I tell her like, hey, this factual thing was not okay. I can control whether I ignore that and say, you know what, I'm going to give my attention to the girls I came with. And I'm so sorry she made that choice. That's really sad, like a really sad thing to do. I'm sorry she made that choice, but I'm going to use my energy on my girls, you know? And again, all of this is so easy to say. If I were in the moment, I'd be ticked off with tears, a little sting of tears as well. But the only thing you can do is what you can do. And I'm very aware of how that feels like, okay, Danielle, but it's the only thing, because otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy trying to deduct and psychoanalyze what she's doing and being highly attuned to what she's got going on. How can I find a way to salvage the experience I'm having? And how can I find a way to long-term figure out to what degree I want this woman in my life if I have control over that?
Yeah. That's the thing that I keep coming back to. I'm like, this is not something that I deal with anymore. It's obviously something that I dealt with for years and years and years and years and years. I feel like my whole life is this simultaneous, like these perpendicular, no, these parallel lines of having really wonderful friendships and really hard friendships, just my whole life. Until I finally realized that I don't have to be friends with people who are mean to me.
Yeah.
And that is such a deal breaker, that covert, like sneaky meanness. There are a handful of things for me that I'm like, I will not move forward in this friendship because I'm not safe and I don't have time for that. And there are so many women in the world that I want to spend time with and invest in. If I don't know what's happening when I turn my back, absolutely not doing that anymore. I'm too old for that. There's not enough time for that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, I don't deal with this anymore. And I'm so glad, because that kind of behavior to me is such a deal breaker. But I know that there are some women who are like, I work with this girl.
Right.
Or like, this gets into a whole different thing. So I was going to say, this is my sister. We're not even going to go there because that is like, that's a different day. But what if you do? You work with her.
Yeah. And so let me clarify. I think in the spaces where it's like, I can't help where I am, and this is my livelihood, this is where I have to be. I think in those spaces, you have to figure out, and I know this sounds very pedestrian, but like a list of like, okay, what can I control? What can I do about these things? Because it sounds so fluffy to say, but it kind of like empowers you again and shows you, wait, I have some authority. I have some authority. So even though I am by definition a victim here because she's attacking me and I'm on the receiving end, wait, I have some authority here. I can reduce how many times I'm in shared spaces. If she does things moving forward, I'm going to not even register it. And honestly, the best, I hate to say revenge, but is you living your life. Because think about it, if I'm intent on making you uncomfortable, and every time I look over, like you're laughing with friends, you're doing your thing, you're not falling victim to it, I either stop or, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's not working, but it just burns me up to see you still enjoying your life and having fun with other people and doing your thing. So if you have to share spaces, it's the main thing you can do, especially if you've already confronted her and there's still little digs, especially the little stuff is what can I control? But to your point, in these spaces where this person's supposed to be your friend, but she's still doing those things, sometimes I am very surprised when I see like videos on social media and girls start with like, okay, so story time, a friend of mine, and she proceeds to tell a story of a friend who is humiliating her and is still using the language of like my friend. And I'm like, I'm lost. That's not your friend. Like objectively, anybody who even a little bit delights in you being embarrassed, even a little bit, you are not my friend. Period. And I'm not even in the business of telling people, that's a real friend, that's not. I never do it. In coaching, I'm just like, okay, what do you want? How can we make this work? But I'm never the final say. She's not a real friend. But I will tell you this unequivocally. If your friend is taking a little delight in you being humiliated, that is not your friend.
We just need to like pause for a sec. It's so important. And I think, if I could go back and like tell myself in different times where I really would have needed to hear that, my next thought would have been, well, okay, but like, who am I going to hang out with? Well,
Uh,
there are like, what, 4 billion women on this planet, give or take a few. There are so many people that you can be friends with in your office building, at your work, in your sorority, in your like community, in your neighborhood, at your church, whatever. Like, there are so many other women. And I really just wish that, like, if I could go back and tell myself something, like, give up on trying to get in with her or trying to like make it better or trying to figure out if that was a real dig or not, or like go find some people who aren't going to tell you you're too sensitive for taking that personally and who will just actually be kind.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you brought that up because you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right that a lot of us, I don't think that we're naive. Again, I think we can sense those things. So we all noticed that thing.
Yeah.
But I think the reason some of us stay is exactly what you said is, relationships are a woman's primary resource. That's our number one thing is relationships. So the threat, the idea, the fear of being a woman without them, I'd rather endure mistreatment than be a woman without relationships. So I get the fear. I do. The only thing is, remember what we said before about, the thing that determines how long you live and how happy you are is the quality of your relationships. Who cares? Who cares if she's around so that you can say you have a friend if your heart races when she texts you, if you feel like an outsider when she's in the room with you, if you don't feel safe to share literally anything because she's going to criticize, minimize, make fun, or attack. If you are doing the constant mental labor of measuring your words, of feeling nervous that you have to hurry up and text back or you're going to get in trouble, there is no room for that in a quality friendship with another person. There's no room for that. And so I think this points to the fact that, it starts with you, like being comfortable with you. Again, that's very cushy, but it starts with you being comfortable with you and knowing what you deserve. Because if you're not afraid of your own company, you'll suddenly be very strong in the face of mistreatment and be like, you know what? I don't deserve that. I'd rather be by myself while I enter a season in positioning myself for new connections because I don't deserve this. And I don't want it to end up breaking me for the next person. So I can't be your punching bag. I'm comfortable with self, which is a whole other, piece of work that we've got to get down to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. That was another big piece. And honestly, I think that probably was, yeah, I think that really was the turning point, was like learning how to be a good friend to myself, enjoying my own company, not feeling so alone by myself. Because then it was like, well, I would absolutely rather hang out with myself than with someone who's being unkind to me. Like, my company I'm a lot of fun.
Yeah, there you go. And I think a lot of women can sense that too, like knowing that you'll stay, knowing I'm the only one you have. I mean, I hate to say that, but some women know that. I know that I'm the main source of socializing or trust or companionship that you have. And so I'm manipulating that or taking advantage of the fact that you're still going to be here because I can say whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you spoke to that because I know for a lot of us, that's a very real thing.
I know for me, my go-to is always, what did I do to contribute to this? Like, why, like, it's got to be my fault. And I feel like it's really worth saying that if someone is treating you this way, it is not your fault. It's not because of you. So why do some, and we're not talking about men, why do some women treat other women like this? Where does this come from?
I mean, I think it comes from a myriad of things. The first is, how your primary female caregiver, for most of us are mothers, even talked about other women to you. If when you brought her an issue, she started downloading messages in your mind like, oh, well, baby, they're just jealous. You know how girls are. If you get into it with a girl and she's like, well, you cut her off, that helps you kind of think about certain things. If your mom, just friendship aside, if she's talking to you as somebody who was very critical, as somebody who did silent treatment to you, so you are left without any data to know what's going on here. So the only thing you can arrive on is it must be me, right? Because your mom's mad, so she's not informing you. And you're just sitting with that yourself. There are lots of different things that we go through that can make us think this must be my fault. Sometimes people explicitly telling you, Well, you're too this, you're too much as you were growing up. It could be for a lot of things. But I think what's so interesting about friendship is it does force us to reckon with a lot of things we think are just private, past childhood things. You're bringing all your stuff to the table in a friendship. It can't just be, I'm going to jump in and be a good friend. What's going on with you? How do I even define a good friend? Do I define a good friend as keeping my friend happy all of the time? And that's my responsibility, so I think regardless of what's going on, we have to acknowledge that friendship forces you to bring a lot of your personal stuff to the table, and that can be really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we really do pass on the things that have been given to us. If we, whether it's from our families, whether it's from past friendships, like if we have been mean girled, it is really like helpful to then do it to someone else. It makes us feel not quite as small, not quite as powerless. And so I think almost all the time, if someone is treating you like this, it's because someone important to them has treated them like this. And I think maybe they know better, maybe they don't, maybe they can't do better. But regardless, I love that you keep coming back to what can you do? Because I think that one of the most powerful things I've ever learned was about boundaries and about how boundaries have nothing to do with what someone else does. It's always about what you do. It is about saying, this is what I will tolerate. This is what is required to be in my life. This is what I will allow to happen on my lawn. It's a fence around your space saying, these are the rules of my house. This is what you need to do or not do in order to be in my space. And if you don't, this is what happens. You can't come here anymore.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of times we think that boundaries are the rules we come up with to govern others' behavior. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I'll always say, you do what you want. But I'm telling you that here are the lines of what makes me feel good. And if XYZ continues to happen, here's what I'm going to have to do. Because it's all about what I can control. So, recently had a client and she told me she has this friend who is constantly reminding her of how she used to be in college. And she's evolved since then. But every time they get together in front of other people, she's telling embarrassing stories of just some of the nonsense she used to engage in. But she's not that person anymore. And she's told her multiple times, like, hey, could you not? And the friend's just like, oh my God, come on. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, girl, what do you mean? And so we had a conversation around how to word that. So we decided, the next time she had invited her to a barbecue, all the families were getting together next Saturday. And we came up with, she tells her on the phone, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. I cannot wait. Heads up though, if there are jokes about me in college, we're going to have to leave. And the friend was, oh my gosh, come on. She was like, okay, but I'm letting you know, if that happens, we're going to have to pack up. Okay. And she said the jokes didn't happen. So I'm letting you know, you do what you do. But if these things happen, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z so that they understand what those consequences might be. And for those women who are listening who feel really frightened by that because it makes them feel like they're being an authoritarian or not a nice friend, I need you to know that the right people want that data. You bet your butt, I want to know the top close women in my life. I need to know, what are your preferences, needs, and boundaries? I don't ever want to know that I'm the cause of some kind of emotional harm and you are not telling me. So you telling people your boundaries is you telling them the information they need to love you well. And the right people want that information.
Yep. That's another, I think because that's another real must have for me in friendships is I need to know that you'll be honest with me. I would be devastated if I had been making some joke that made you feel bad forever. That is not who I want to be in anyone's life. And so but I need you to tell me what those things are. That is so powerful. And also if you have a friend who's minimizing, telling you this should be funny and you go, this isn't funny. If she doesn't respect that and value how you feel about your own stories being told in front of your family and your friends, again, that is not a mark of a good friendship. You get to decide how you feel about those stories. And she needs to respect that.
It's that simple. Yeah.
What I want to go back to, you talked about being in being a high school teacher and watching watching so much happen because of these hard friendship moments in women's and girls' lives. I think we are hesitant to stand up for ourselves, but we need to. What does that look like? Like, what happens if we don't? What is some of the fallout for us as adult women?
Yeah, standing up for ourselves is really tough. And it's really tough in high school. I'll give them some credit because you have to see these people every day for 8 hours a day. So it's like a different container because you're trying to survive as opposed to like as adults, we're like, well, just don't talk to her anymore. So it's hard, but those are also the spaces where you're practicing the skill. How do I negotiate for my needs? How do I say I'm not comfortable? How do I say, hey, that wasn't right? So you're learning for the first time how it feels to step into those things and what the consequences might be depending on who you're talking to and how to honestly be resilient, right? Because I often say that I think for some of us, we focus so much on, well, what do I do if a friend does this? And well, what if I do, what if I, at some point, I think the skill we got to get comfortable developing is the resilience because I can't control being rejected, being talked down to, being disappointed, even by friends who love me, are going to let me down. But I'm curious about what next? Like, how do I cope? Do I have skills of coping? Do I cut people off because I really don't have conflict resolution skills? Do I attack because I'm hypersensitive and I don't know how to talk calmly? Do I pout or give silent treatment because I never learned how to shape my words to express how I feel? Do I punish? Because I recently, with even adult friends are doing little things to get back at you because I don't know how to forgive you. I have no margin for you to make mistakes or you better be the perfect friend with me. So, standing up for ourselves, I think we have to get comfortable with, but I think we also need to get more comfortable with resilience because we're fearful of standing up for ourselves because we're scared of one, being mischaracterized. I don't want to look like the bad guy. I wish I had $1 for every time a woman told me that. If I did, we'd be having this conversation from my house in Bora Bora, okay? It's always, I don't want to look like the bad guy. It's, I don't want to hurt her feelings, which is noble, right? But I think on the other side of all these is, once you do though, because you got to advocate for what makes you feel comfortable and safe, but do you have the skill of being resilient afterwards? I hope things work out. I hope she responds to you in the ideal way. Oh gosh, thank you for telling me that you're so right. I hope so. But in the event that she doesn't, I'm more curious about, do you have the skill of being okay? And I think that's what a lot of us need to develop. And then we won't be so immobilized at the thought of standing up for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I am so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for your research. I'm so grateful for like the way that you talk about these things because it's so clear, it's so helpful, it's so practical, it is so good. This is hard, but I feel like the work that you're doing has made it so much easier. Tell us when your book comes out, and how we can get it because I really, really, really want every single woman listening to get a copy.
I'm so glad. Yeah. So the book, Fighting for Our Friendships, comes out on May 7th, and we're very excited to get it in your hands. And we think it's like the perfect book club book. We suggest that women do it in a safe space, because there are end of chapter questions that ask you about your female friendship journey, relationship with your mom. So things like that. So we say get in a safe space with 3-4 other women who you trust and go through the book together. But I'm just so grateful to you for facilitating a moment to have this conversation, for asking thoughtful questions on behalf of the women who are listening. But I just think that if you have put dollars and time toward figuring out how to be a better wife, a better mom, a better CEO, I strongly encourage you to put some dollars behind how do I become a better friend and how do I form platonic relationships with other women that are healthy and that are satisfying. And again, I hope this is one of many friendship books on your shelf, but I'm very honored that some women are trusting me to be a part of their friendship journey.
Ugh, love this. I love you. We'll see you next time you come on Girls Night because I just am insisting that you come back. Danielle, thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome.